She asked nothing from the predator she saved. Yet, when Confederation officials demand Mara reveal the unprecedented alliance or face imprisonment, the Apex Legion surrounds the station in full battle formation. In this dramatic standoff, Mara becomes the unexpected mediator between worlds, leveraging the Legion's unwavering loyalty to force policy changes, protecting endangered species across the sector. On the remote research outpost of Moon, VTX-9, tucked away in the farthest reaches of the Callus sector, the soil samples were always the same: mineral-heavy, microbially complex, and, according to Mara Ellis's superiors, utterly insignificant. "Just dirt," Outpost Commander Hadrian remarked whenever he passed her lab, his voice edged with the particular disdain reserved for those whose work he deemed expendable. Months of resources to analyze dirt. Mara, who had spent 8 years earning her doctorate in xenobiology, with a specialization in extraterrestrial soil ecosystems, never bothered to correct him. 6 months into her 3-year assignment on VTX-9, she had learned that defending her research to those who measured value solely in immediate economic return was an exercise in futility. Instead, she simply nodded, smiled politely, and returned to her microscope, where an entire universe of previously uncatalogued organisms awaited her attention. The research outpost, officially designated Outpost Callus VTX-9R12, consisted of 6 interconnected modules arranged in a rough hexagon around a central command hub. 28 personnel shared the cramped quarters: 5 security officers, 8 engineers, 4 medical staff, and 11 scientists of various disciplines. As the only xenobiologist focused on microbial life, Mara often found herself working alone in Lab Module 3, which suited her temperament. The quiet hum of equipment and the meticulous nature of her work provided a comforting rhythm to her days. "Ellis, your requisition for additional culture medium has been denied," announced the automated message system as Mara prepared to leave the lab one evening. Reason: resource allocation priority assessment grade insufficient. Mara sighed. Unsurprised. It was the 3rd denial this month. She would have to make do with what she had, stretching supplies meant for routine analysis to accommodate her more ambitious cataloging project. Removing her lab coat, she caught a glimpse of herself in the reflective surface of the decontamination chamber. Dark circles beneath tired eyes. Honey-brown hair pulled back in a practical but unflattering knot. Lab coat slightly too large for her slender frame. She looked every bit the overworked, underappreciated researcher she had become. The mess hall was nearly empty when she arrived, the late shift having already finished their meals. Lieutenant Syra Tolan, head of security, sat alone at a corner table, datapad in one hand, synth coffee in the other. Syra glanced up as Mara collected her meal, a bland assortment of nutrient-balanced but flavor-deficient food cubes, and gestured to the empty chair opposite her. "Another late night in the dirt mines?" Syra asked, a hint of genuine interest softening the teasing question. Mara smiled as she sat. Unlike most of the outpost staff, Syra never dismissed her work. Found 3 new bacterial strains in the northern quadrant samples. One appears to accelerate mineral decomposition at rates that could revolutionize terraforming processes. "Let me guess," Syra said, setting down her datapad. "Command responded with their usual enthusiasm?" "Resource allocation priority assessment grade insufficient," Mara quoted dryly. Syra shook her head, short-cropped silver hair catching the light. Despite being only in her mid-40s, Syra's hair had turned completely silver during her 15 years with the Confederation security forces. The stress of border skirmishes and pirate encounters had left its mark, though her sharp green eyes remained alert and calculating. "The supply ship arrives in 2 weeks," Syra offered. "I could reclassify some of your requests under security protocols. Soil composition affecting structural integrity, perhaps?" It wasn't the first time Syra had offered to bend regulations for her, and while Mara appreciated the gesture, She always declined. Thanks, but I'll manage. I'd rather not give Hadrian another reason to question my worth to this mission. The conversation shifted to station gossip and upcoming duty rotations. Mara enjoyed these rare moments of camaraderie. Most of her colleagues viewed her as the eccentric soil scientist, too absorbed in microbes to engage in social niceties. Few bothered to look beyond that perception. As she returned to her quarters later that evening, Mara's personal communicator chimed with an incoming message. The identification code indicated it was from her former professor and mentor, Dr. Eliana Vasquez. "Mara, my brilliant mud digger," began the holographic message, Eliana's weathered face crinkling with affection. "I've reviewed your latest findings. The Celtrian bacteria variant you've isolated could indeed represent a significant advancement in our understanding of accelerated mineral processing. I've forwarded your paper to colleagues at the Xenobiological Society. Don't let those bureaucrats convince you that your work doesn't matter. The quietest discoveries often make the loudest impacts in time. Keep digging, dear." Mara felt a swell of gratitude as the message ended. Eliana had always believed in her when others didn't. With renewed determination, she reviewed her plans for the next day's expedition. The cave systems in Sector 12 remained largely unexplored, and preliminary scans indicated unusual mineral compositions that might harbor unique microbial communities. Sleep came fitfully that night, her dreams filled with microscopic worlds and the endless, unexplored terrain of VTX-9. Morning arrived with the artificial lighting system's gradual brightening, simulating dawn in the windowless quarters. Mara dressed quickly in her expedition gear, reinforced coveralls, sturdy boots, and a utility belt equipped with sample containers, analysis tools, and emergency supplies. The standard-issue environmental suit, necessary for VTX-9's thin, barely breathable atmosphere, waited in the equipment locker near the outpost's main airlock. Morning expedition to Sector 12, Cave System Designation CS-47. She reported to the command center, as protocol required. Estimated return, 1600 hours. Commander Hadrian barely glanced up from his console. Approved. Try not to waste too much oxygen collecting dirt. Ellis. Mara bit back a retort, and instead focused on final equipment checks. The expedition rover, a sturdy, six-wheeled vehicle designed for VTX-9's rugged terrain, had been prepped by the engineering team the previous evening. She loaded her scientific equipment into the storage compartment and performed a quick systems check. "All loaded up for another exciting day of mud collection?" called a voice from behind her. Engineer Tomas Rivera approached with a maintenance kit in hand. "I reinforced the suspension after last week's excursion. Should handle the northern ridge better now." "Thanks, Tomas," Mara said, genuinely appreciative. The engineering team, at least, respected the practical challenges of her fieldwork, even if they shared the general dismissiveness toward its scientific value. "I also installed that core sampling drill you designed," he added, patting the rover's side compartment. "It's a solid piece of engineering. You missed your calling." Mara smiled. "Just a hobby. But it should make deeper sediment collection possible without destabilizing cave structures." The journey to Sector 12 took just under an hour, the rover's powerful motors handling the increasingly rocky terrain with ease. VTX-9's landscape was a study in muted colors, rust-red soil, gray-black rock formations, and occasional patches of dull purple where primitive lichen-like organisms had established tenuous colonies. The sky, visible through her helmet visor, was a perpetual dusty orange. The distant sun filtered through the moon's thin atmosphere. Cave System CS-47 appeared on the horizon, a series of jagged openings in the base of a towering cliff face. Mara parked the rover at a safe distance and activated its defensive shields, a necessary precaution against the occasional electrical storms that swept across VTX-9's surface, with little warning. After a final equipment check, she made her way toward the cave entrance, the reduced gravity making her movements slightly bouncy despite the weight of her environmental suit. The cave opening was larger than it had appeared in the survey scans, easily 3 meters high and twice as wide. Mara activated her suit lights and proceeded cautiously, mapping scanner in one hand, sample collector in the other. The interior walls glittered with mineral deposits, promising signs for microbial activity. 2 hours into her exploration, having collected samples from progressively deeper sections of the cave system, Mara's scanner detected an anomaly. A chamber ahead registered unusual heat signatures and atmospheric variations inconsistent with the surrounding geology. Intrigued, she followed the narrow passage as it descended at a steep angle, relying on her suit's enhanced grip systems to maintain footing on the slick surface. The passage opened suddenly into a vast cavern, so large that her suit lights couldn't illuminate its full extent. The scanner indicated a more oxygen-rich atmosphere here, still not enough to remove her helmet, but significantly different from the moon's surface conditions. Most striking, however, were the bioluminescent organisms covering portions of the walls and ceiling, bathing the chamber in soft, pulsating blue-green light. "Outpost Command, this is Ellis," she reported, activating her communication link. "I've discovered a major biological anomaly in cave system, CS-47. Extensive bioluminescent colony, possibly symbiotic with the cave ecosystem. Requesting permission to extend expedition timeline for preliminary documentation." Static answered her call. The cave's mineral composition was likely interfering with communications. She would need to return to the surface to establish contact, but not before collecting initial samples of this extraordinary find. As Mara moved deeper into the cavern, her attention focused on the glowing organisms. She failed to notice the subtle shift in the ground beneath her feet. The first warning came as a low rumble, vibrating through her boots. Then, with terrifying suddenness, the section of floor ahead of her collapsed, revealing a hidden chasm below. Mara stumbled backward, narrowly avoiding being dragged into the widening gap. Heart pounding, she scrambled for stable ground as more of the cavern floor gave way. A massive section of ceiling crashed down, blocking her return path. In seconds, the stable cavern had transformed into a death trap of collapsing rock and widening fissures. Finding temporary shelter behind a large boulder, Mara assessed her situation. The main passage was blocked. Her communications were jammed, and the cavern continued to destabilize around her. The emergency beacon in her suit would be useless this deep underground. She needed to find another way out, and quickly. A pained roar, so deep and powerful it seemed to vibrate through her bones despite the environmental suit's protection, froze her in place. The sound was unmistakably biological, not geological. Something else was in the cavern with her. Against all scientific training and survival instincts, Mara moved toward the sound. If there was a creature large enough to produce such a vocalization, it meant another passage existed, one large enough for the creature to have entered through. Where there was a passage, there was a potential escape route. Following the intermittent roars, which now sounded more like expressions of pain than aggression, Mara navigated the treacherous cavern floor. She rounded a massive stalagmite formation and stopped abruptly, her light illuminating something her years of scientific training had not prepared her for. Pinned beneath a fallen slab of rock lay a creature unlike anything documented on VTX-9. It was enormous, at least 4 meters long, with a body structure reminiscent of Earth's prehistoric predators, yet distinctly alien. Its hide was covered in overlapping plates that appeared metallic, glinting with an iridescent sheen in her suit lights. 6 limbs, 4 powerful legs, and 2 smaller, more articulated appendages near what she assumed was the head, suggested an evolved predatory form. Most striking were the crystalline structures protruding from its spine and shoulder areas, currently emitting a dull red glow. The creature's head turned toward her, revealing multiple eyes arranged in a pattern that suggested excellent depth perception and peripheral vision, evolutionary traits of an apex predator. A ridge of sensory organs ran along what appeared to be a jawline studded with teeth designed for tearing flesh. Protocol was absolutely clear in this situation. Mara should retreat immediately, return to the outpost, and report the discovery. A xenobiology team specializing in macrofauna would be dispatched. The creature would be documented, studied, and, given its apparent size and predatory nature, likely deemed a potential threat to be contained or eliminated. But as Mara observed the trapped creature, she noticed details that gave her pause. The labored rise and fall of its chest cavity, the pool of viscous, dark fluid, presumably blood, spreading slowly beneath it. The way its eyes followed her movements, not with predatory calculation, but with what appeared to be pain-clouded awareness. This was no mindless beast. The intelligence in those eyes was unmistakable. And it was dying. Confederation protocol or not, Mara couldn't simply leave a sentient creature to die slowly, trapped and in pain, making a decision that would irrevocably alter her life's trajectory. She set down her sample case and approached the fallen rock slab. "I'm going to try to help you," she said aloud, knowing the creature couldn't understand her words, but hoping her tone might convey her intentions. "But you'll need to stay still." The creature made no move to attack as she came closer, its multiple eyes tracking her with what she interpreted as wary confusion. Up close, the fallen rock was even more massive than she'd initially assessed, far too heavy for her to move alone, even in VTX-9's reduced gravity. Mara's gaze fell on her sample case, specifically on the core sampling drill Thomas had installed. It wasn't designed for this purpose, but with modifications, it might serve as a makeshift lever, or even help break the rock into manageable pieces. For the next hour, Mara worked feverishly, alternating between attempting to create leverage points around the rock slab and checking the creature's deteriorating condition. The bioluminescent organisms provided just enough light to work by when she directed her suit lights elsewhere. Twice, smaller aftershocks sent more debris tumbling from the ceiling, forcing her to take cover. Throughout her efforts, the creature remained eerily still, watching her with an intensity that should have been unnerving, but instead fueled her determination. When she finally managed to position her makeshift lever at a critical stress point in the rock slab, she turned to the creature. "This might hurt when the pressure shifts," she warned, unsure if her meaning could possibly be conveyed across such different species. "But it's the only way." With a tremendous effort, Mara threw her weight against the lever. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a crack that echoed throughout the cavern, the slab split along a natural fault line. The creature let out another roar, this one clearly of pain, as the pressure shifted. Encouraged, Mara repositioned her lever and applied pressure again. This time, a large section of the rock moved enough for the creature to potentially pull free. "Come on," she urged, straining to hold the lever in position. "You need to move now." As if understanding her words, the creature began to struggle, its powerful limbs scrabbling for purchase on the slick cavern floor. With a final, desperate heave, it pulled itself from beneath the remaining rock, collapsing a short distance away, sides heaving with exertion. Mara approached cautiously, medical scanner in hand. The creature's injuries were severe, deep lacerations along its side, what appeared to be a fractured limb, and possibly internal damage. Without treatment, it would likely still die, albeit more slowly and painfully than being crushed. Her medical supplies were limited and designed for human physiology, but some basic principles might translate: antiseptic to prevent infection, synthetic coagulant to slow bleeding, perhaps even the emergency bone-setting compound for the fractured limb. It was a desperate gamble with unpredictable results, but the alternative was to leave the creature to a lingering death. "This will sting," she warned as she prepared the antiseptic spray, "but it might save your life." The creature flinched when the spray hit its open wounds, but didn't lash out. Encouraged, Mara continued treatment, working methodically through her limited medical supplies. The fracture proved more challenging, but the setting compound appeared to adhere to the creature's unique bone structure, providing stability, if not perfect alignment. Throughout the impromptu medical intervention, the creature's eyes never left her. The crystalline structures along its spine gradually shifted from alarming red to a cooler blue-violet hue, which Mara hypothesized might indicate decreasing pain or stress levels. When she had done all she could with her limited supplies, Mara sat back on her heels, suddenly aware of her own exhaustion. Hours had passed since the cave-in, and her oxygen supply would become critical if she didn't find a way to the surface soon. "I need to find a way out," she told the creature, gathering her remaining equipment. "And so do you. If you can move." As if in response, the creature struggled to its feet, swaying slightly but remaining upright. It took a tentative step, testing the set limb, then another more confident one. After a moment's hesitation, it moved past Mara toward a section of the cavern wall that appeared solid to her eyes. Reaching it, the creature pressed one of its smaller, articulated limbs against what looked like an ordinary section of rock. To Mara's astonishment, a seam of bioluminescence appeared, outlining a narrow passage previously invisible in the dim light. The creature turned back to her, then looked meaningfully at the revealed passage. The invitation was unmistakable. "You're showing me the way out?" Mara asked, incredulous. The creature made a low, rumbling sound that she couldn't interpret as anything other than affirmation. It moved into the passage, pausing to ensure she followed. The hidden tunnel wound upward through the moon's crust, occasionally branching into complex networks that would have hopelessly confused Mara without her guide. In some sections, the passage grew so narrow that she feared the injured creature wouldn't fit. Yet it navigated each obstacle with a grace that belied its size and wounded state. After what seemed like hours of climbing, a faint orange glow ahead signaled proximity to the surface. The light grew stronger until finally, they emerged onto a ridge overlooking the vast, dusty plains of VTX-9. They were at least 5 kilometers from where Mara had entered the cave system, in a section of the region not yet mapped by outpost surveys. In the strange orange twilight of VTX-9's perpetual dusk, Mara got her first clear view of her unlikely companion. The creature was even more impressive in natural light, its metallic-seeming hide reflecting the dim sunlight in subtle rainbow patterns. The crystalline structures along its spine had settled into a calm, blue glow, creating an almost ethereal aura around its powerful form. "Thank you," Mara said simply, knowing words were inadequate for what had transpired between them. "I hope you recover fully." The creature regarded her for a long moment, its multiple eyes blinking in sequence. Then, with deliberate slowness, it lowered its massive head in what could only be interpreted as a bow. Before Mara could react, it turned and moved with surprising speed back into the tunnel entrance, disappearing into the darkness. Mara stood watching the empty tunnel for several minutes, processing the extraordinary encounter. Her scientific mind was already cataloging details: approximate size and weight, skeletal structure, potential dietary requirements based on dentition, the curious crystalline growths, and their apparent mood-indicating properties. But beneath the clinical observations ran a deeper current of wonder. She had connected, however briefly, with an intelligent alien species previously unknown to Confederation science, and she had absolutely no idea how to report it without sounding insane. Her rover's locator beacon showed it was nearly 7 kilometers away, a long trek in an environmental suit with depleted oxygen reserves. Activating her emergency beacon, Mara began the journey back, knowing the outpost would send a rescue team once they realized she was overdue. Sure enough, she had covered less than 2 kilometers when the outpost's emergency response vehicle appeared on the horizon. Lieutenant Syra Tolan herself led the rescue team, her expression shifting from professional concern to visible relief when she spotted Mara. "Ellis, what happened? You missed 2 check-ins, and your rover's still at the original coordinates." Mara hesitated. The truth seemed impossible to articulate, especially surrounded by the rescue team, some of whom already viewed her research with skepticism. "Cave in," she said finally. "I got trapped and had to find an alternate exit. Lost communications in the process." Sierra's eyes narrowed slightly, sensing the omission, but she didn't press for details in front of the others. "You're injured," she noted instead, gesturing to the dark stains on Mara's environmental suit, transferred from the creature during her medical ministrations. "Not my blood," Mara said truthfully, then added a partial lie. "Some kind of native fauna was also caught in the collapse. I tried to help it, but I don't think it survived." The trip back to the outpost passed in a blur of concerned questions and medical checks. Mara maintained her simplified version of events, describing the bioluminescent organisms in detail, but omitting any mention of the intelligent predator. By the time she was cleared by medical and debriefed by Commander Hadrian, who seemed more concerned about the damaged equipment than her well-being, exhaustion had overtaken her completely. "Get some rest, Ellis," Hadrian ordered dismissively. "And next time, stick to the surveyed sections. We don't have resources to replace equipment lost to your reckless exploration." Too tired to defend herself, Mara retreated to her quarters, collapsing onto her bunk still fully clothed. Sleep claimed her instantly, her dreams filled with glowing crystals and intelligent, alien eyes. She awoke to an urgent knocking at her door, disoriented and stiff from yesterday's ordeal. Mara stumbled to answer it, finding Syra waiting outside with an uncharacteristically tense expression. "We need to talk," the security chief said without preamble. "Privately." Still groggy, Mara nodded and stepped back to allow Syra entry. The lieutenant closed the door firmly behind her and activated a small device that emitted a soft hum, a conversation scrambler that would prevent any potential eavesdropping. "What's going on?" Mara asked, suddenly alert. Syra fixed her with an intense stare. "I need you to tell me exactly what happened in that cave system. Ellis, the full version this time." "I told you." "No," Syra cut her off. "You gave the sanitized report. I want to know what really happened. Because something is out there. Something that shouldn't be possible according to all our surveys. And I think you know what it is." Mara sank onto the edge of her bunk, weighing her options. Syra had always been fair, even supportive of her work. If anyone would listen without immediate dismissal, it would be her. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you," she said finally. "Try me." So Mara did. She recounted the entire experience, the massive, intelligent predator, the rescue attempt, the medical treatment, and the guided escape through hidden tunnels. Throughout her account, Syra's expression remained professionally neutral, though her eyes widened almost imperceptibly at several points. When Mara finished, silence hung between them for several long moments. "You realize how this sounds," Syra said finally. "Not a question, but a statement of fact." Mara nodded. "That's why I didn't include it in my report. No evidence. No witness except me. And a story about an undocumented, intelligent predator species that just happened to guide me to safety out of gratitude. I'd be scheduled for psychiatric evaluation before I finished speaking." "And yet," Syra said slowly, "something triggered every motion sensor on the outpost's western perimeter at 0300 hours this morning. Something large enough to register on seismic monitors, but moving too quickly and systematically to be geological activity." Mara felt her pulse quicken. "The creature I helped?" "Perhaps." Syra activated her datapad, showing Mara a blurry security image captured in the pre-dawn hours. The quality was poor, the lighting worse, but the silhouette was unmistakable. A large, quadrupedal form with distinctive crystalline protrusions along its spine. "It came to the outpost," Mara whispered, equal parts amazed and alarmed. "Circled it twice, lingered near Lab Module 3, your lab, then departed before security could respond." Syra deactivated the datapad. It moved like it knew exactly where the blind spots in our sensor grid were located. The implications sent a chill down Mara's spine. Not only was the creature intelligent, but it possessed a level of technological awareness that suggested a sophisticated understanding of human systems. "Has anyone else seen this footage?" she asked. "Just the duty officer, who assumed it was a sensor malfunction." Syra's expression hardened. "I haven't reported it yet. I wanted to hear your side first." "What happens now?" Syra was silent for a moment, her military training visibly at odds with what Mara suspected was a personal ethical dilemma. "Protocol is clear," she said finally. "Unknown alien intelligence with potential technological capabilities must be reported to Confederation Central Command immediately. They would send a containment and study team." The euphemism wasn't lost on Mara. "You mean they'd capture it or kill it?" "That's standard procedure for potentially dangerous unknown species." "Yes." Syra's voice remained neutral, but something in her eyes suggested she wasn't entirely comfortable with the protocol. "The question is, what do you think we should do?" The question caught Mara off guard. She had expected Syra, with her military background and dedication to protocol, to insist on official channels regardless of personal feelings. "I think," Mara said carefully, "that we're dealing with an intelligent species that had every opportunity to harm me, but chose instead to help me, despite its own injuries. I think responding to that with capture or elimination would be not just ethically wrong, but potentially disastrous, if there are more of its kind." "And there's the problem," Syra sighed. "If there are more, if this creature is part of a previously undocumented sentient species with technological capabilities, failing to report it could be considered treason under Confederation security protocols." Mara's mind raced through possibilities, each seemingly worse than the last. "What if we document it ourselves first?" she suggested. "Gather evidence of its intelligence, its non-hostile nature. Present a complete case to command, rather than a vague report that would trigger standard containment procedures." Syra considered this, her military discipline warring visibly with what Mara suspected was a personal sense of justice. "It would be bending protocol to the breaking point," she said slowly. "But not technically violating it. We'd be conducting preliminary assessment before filing a complete report." "Exactly," Mara pressed, sensing Syra's wavering resolve. "Standard scientific procedure. We don't have enough data yet to determine the appropriate response category." After what seemed an eternity, Syra nodded. 3 days, she said firmly. "We document what we can, determine the scope of what we're dealing with, then file a comprehensive report regardless of what we find. I can justify that timeline to command if questioned." Relief flooded through Mara. 3 days wasn't much, but it was something. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Syra warned, reactivating her scrambler and moving toward the door. "If this creature proves dangerous, or if there's an entire civilization we've somehow missed in our surveys, we could both end up court-martialed for delayed reporting." As Syra left, Mara began planning. She would need equipment, a secure way to document any encounters, and a plausible scientific explanation for her sudden interest in exploring the western perimeter. Most critically, she needed to find the creature again, if it was still in the vicinity, and somehow communicate her intentions. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of preparation and tense waiting. Mara requested permission for a comprehensive microbial survey of the Western Ridge, citing the unique bioluminescent organisms she had discovered in the cave system. Commander Hadrian, still displeased about the lost equipment but unable to deny the scientific merit, grudgingly approved a limited expedition with strict check-in protocols. Syra, meanwhile, adjusted the security patrol schedules to ensure minimal presence in the target area during Mara's expedition window. She also provided Mara with a modified communication device that would record any encounters while maintaining a secure, encrypted connection to Syra's personal datapad. "Remember," Syra cautioned as Mara prepared to depart on the morning of the expedition. "Observation only. No interaction unless absolutely necessary. And certainly no solo heroics like in the cave. We document, we assess, we report. Clear?" "Crystal," Mara agreed, though they both knew the situation was far from that simple. The expedition rover performed flawlessly as Mara navigated the familiar path toward the western ridge. This time, however, she continued past the cave system entrance, following the ridgeline toward the area where the creature had last been detected by outpost sensors. The terrain grew increasingly rugged, with deep ravines cutting through the rocky landscape like ancient scars. After 2 hours of careful progress, Mara reached a plateau overlooking a vast basin. The scanner showed no large life forms in the immediate vicinity, but the ravines could easily mask biosignatures. She parked the rover at the plateau's edge and prepared her equipment: sample collectors for her cover story, the modified recording device, and, against Syra's explicit instructions, a medical kit with supplies similar to those she had used to treat the creature. The reduced gravity of VTX-9 made it relatively easy to descend into the basin, despite the steep terrain. Mara moved cautiously. Scanner, sweeping continuously for any sign of the creature. The silence was absolute, broken only by the soft hiss of her environmental suit's air recyclers and the occasional crunch of loose rock beneath her boots. Nearly an hour into her search, the scanner registered a faint anomaly, an area of elevated temperature approximately 200 meters ahead, concealed within a narrow ravine. It could be geothermal activity, common enough on VTX-9, but the pattern seemed too localized, too regular. Heart pounding. Mara approached the ravine entrance, recording device active. The ravine walls rose steeply on either side, creating a natural corridor that twisted deeper into the basin's rocky heart. The temperature anomaly grew stronger as she advanced, accompanied now by traces of an unfamiliar energy signature that made the scanner's readings fluctuate erratically. Rounding a sharp bend in the ravine, Mara stopped abruptly. Before her, nestled against the ravine wall, was what could only be described as a shelter. Not a natural formation, but a deliberately constructed space. An opening in the rock face had been expanded and reinforced with materials that seemed to blend seamlessly with the surrounding stone. The entrance was partially concealed by a sheet of something resembling metallic fabric that rippled slightly in the faint breeze. More remarkable than the shelter itself was its occupant. The creature, her creature, as she had begun to think of it, lay just inside the entrance. Its massive form curled in a position that reminded Mara of a resting earth feline. The crystalline structures along its spine emitted a soft, pulsating blue-green light, similar to the bioluminescent organisms in the cave. It was awake and watching her, multiple eyes unblinking in the dim light of the ravine. Mara froze, uncertain how to proceed. The recording device was capturing everything, which meant Syra would soon be watching this encounter unfold in real time. The protocol they had agreed upon was clear: observation only, no interaction. But standing motionless at the ravine bend felt not just inadequate, but somehow disrespectful to the intelligence she had witnessed in those alien eyes. Making a decision that she suspected Syra would categorize as solo heroics, Mara slowly, deliberately removed her helmet. VTX-9's atmosphere was thin, but breathable for short periods, and the symbolic vulnerability of the gesture seemed important. "Hello again," she said softly, her voice sounding strange in the thin air. "I came to see if you were healing properly." The creature's response was immediate and unexpected. It rose to its full height, even more impressive outside the confines of the cave, and performed the same deliberate bow she had witnessed before. Then, to Mara's astonishment, it moved aside, clearly inviting her into the shelter. The recording device vibrated against her wrist, Sira's attempt to communicate. Likely a warning to retreat. Ignoring it, Mara approached slowly, hands open at her sides in what she hoped was a universal gesture of peaceful intent. The interior of the shelter was surprisingly sophisticated. What had appeared from outside to be a simple cave opening was in fact the entrance to a complex space carved into the ravine wall. The walls were lined with the same seamless material she had noticed at the entrance, providing both structural support and insulation. Recessed areas contained what appeared to be storage units and equipment of unfamiliar design. Most notably, a device near the center of the space emitted the energy signature her scanner had detected. Some form of power generator, she guessed, though its operation principles were beyond her understanding. The creature watched her examination of its dwelling with what Mara interpreted as patient tolerance. When she finally turned her attention back to it, it extended one of its smaller, articulated limbs toward her in a gesture impossible to misinterpret as anything other than greeting. Hesitantly, Mara extended her own hand. The creature's appendage was warm to the touch, its surface textured like fine leather over an underlying hardness that suggested an exoskeletal structure rather than internal bones. The contact lasted only a moment before the creature withdrew, but the significance of the exchange was profound. "I came to check your injuries," Mara explained, gesturing to the medical kit at her belt. "May I?" The creature seemed to consider her request, then lowered itself to a resting position that exposed its injured side. The wounds Mara had treated in the cave were healing remarkably well, too well for natural recovery, suggesting either extraordinary regenerative capabilities or subsequent medical intervention. The fractured limb showed similar improvement, though a slight irregularity in the creature's movement suggested it wasn't completely healed. As Mara knelt to examine the injuries more closely, the recording device at her wrist vibrated again, more insistently this time. Sighing, she activated the audio component. "Ellis, this is beyond observation." Sira's tense voice emerged from the small speaker. "You're in an alien dwelling with an unclassified predator species. Return to the rover immediately." The creature's reaction to Sira's voice was instant and alarming. The crystalline structures along its spine flared from calm blue to vivid amber, and it rose quickly to a defensive posture, head swiveling to locate the source of the unknown voice. "It's all right," Mara said quickly, showing the device to the creature. "Just a communication from my clan member. She's concerned for my safety." Whether it understood her words or merely her calming tone, the creature's posture relaxed slightly, though the crystals retained their amber hue. It made a series of low, rumbling sounds that Mara couldn't interpret, but that clearly indicated some form of communication attempt. "I can't understand you," she said regretfully, "but I think we both know this meeting is important." The creature regarded her for a long moment, then moved to one of the recessed storage areas. It returned with what appeared to be a rough tablet, made of the same material as the shelter walls. Using one clawed digit, it etched a series of symbols into the surface, then presented the tablet to Mara. The symbols were unlike any language Mara had encountered. Not surprising, given that this species was previously undocumented, but their deliberate arrangement clearly indicated a writing system. More importantly, the fact that the creature had immediately attempted written communication suggested it recognized her inability to understand its vocalizations and had adapted accordingly. "You're trying to tell me something," Mara said, studying the symbols. "But I don't know your language yet." The creature reclaimed the tablet and added a simple drawing below the symbols. A basic representation of itself, standing beside what was unmistakably a human figure, with a line connecting them. Connection, Mara guessed. Or alliance, friendship. The creature added more to the drawing, multiple figures resembling itself, arranged in a formation that suggested organization rather than random grouping. "There are more of you," Mara translated, a chill running down her spine despite the shelter's warmth. "A group. A society?" The recording device vibrated once more, but Mara ignored it, transfixed by the implications of what the creature was communicating. Not just an isolated intelligent species, but an organized social structure sophisticated enough to develop writing, technology, and apparently shelter construction techniques advanced beyond Confederation knowledge of this region. How had the Confederation surveys missed this? VTX-9 had been scanned thoroughly before the research outpost was established. No large life forms had been detected, let alone an intelligent species with technological capabilities. Unless they didn't want to be found. The realization struck Mara with the force of physical impact. If this species possessed technology sophisticated enough to create seamless shelters that blended with the natural environment, they might also have developed methods to shield themselves from standard Confederation scanning techniques. The creature seemed to sense her epiphany. It added one final element to the drawing, a circular shape above the grouped figures, with lines radiating outward in a pattern that resembled a stylized sun or star. "Your home," Mara guessed. "Or maybe your leader, central authority." The creature made the rumbling sound again, which Mara was beginning to interpret as affirmation. It set the tablet aside and rose to its full height, the crystalline structures now pulsating with a deep purple light she hadn't observed before. With deliberate movements, it approached a section of the shelter wall that appeared identical to the rest. A touch from its articulated limb caused the wall to shimmer and become translucent, revealing what looked like a communication device of startling complexity. The creature manipulated controls with practiced ease, causing the device to emit a series of pulsed energy signatures that Mara's scanner registered but couldn't identify. The recording device at her wrist went dead. Not just silent, but completely non-functional. The small status light extinguished, the surface cool to the touch. Whatever energy the creature's device had emitted had neutralized Confederation technology with effortless precision. "You disabled my communicator," Mara said, more impressed than alarmed. "Why?" The creature returned to the tablet and etched new symbols, followed by another drawing, multiple figures like itself, surrounding a central point marked with an X. "Others are coming," Mara translated, a mixture of excitement and apprehension flooding through her. "Here, to this location," the creature confirmed with its rumbling affirmation. Mara's mind raced through implications and potential consequences. If more of these beings were converging on this location, the outpost's sensors would eventually detect them. Protocol would be enacted, and Confederation containment teams would be dispatched. First contact would devolve into potential conflict before any meaningful communication could be established. Unless she could somehow convince Commander Hadrian and eventually Confederation Command that these beings posed no threat, that they had, in fact, demonstrated nothing but intelligence and restraint, despite ample opportunity to harm the unwitting humans who had established an outpost on their territory. It seemed an impossible task without Cyrus' support, and she had likely just destroyed that support by ignoring direct instructions and allowing her communication device to be disabled. As if sensing her dilemma, the creature etched one more symbol on the tablet, a simple, curved line that resembled a crescent moon. "I don't understand," Mara admitted. The creature repeated the rumbling sound, then touched its chest near where Mara assumed its primary cardiovascular organ would be located. It then pointed to the crescent symbol and back to itself. "That's your name?" Mara guessed. "Or a designation for yourself?" Affirmative rumble. "Crescent," Mara tried, then shook her head. "No, that doesn't seem right." She studied the curve of the symbol, the elegant simplicity of it. "Rix," she said suddenly, the sound feeling right in her mouth. I'll call you Rix." The creature, Rix, made a new sound, higher pitched and almost melodic. Approval, perhaps, or amusement at her pronunciation. "I'm Mara," she offered in return, touching her own chest. "Mara Ellis." Rix attempted to vocalize the name, producing a sound that approximated Mara, with surprising accuracy, given the differences in their vocal structures. This simple exchange of names felt momentous, the first successful communication between humanity and this unknown species. But the moment of triumph was short-lived, as Mara's oxygen monitor chimed a warning. She had been breathing VTX-9's thin atmosphere too long without her helmet. She needed to return to the rover soon, or risk hypoxia. "I have to go," she explained, gesturing to her helmet and the monitor. "My breathing. I need my shelter. My rover." Rix seemed to understand. It moved to the shelter entrance and peered out, scanning the ravine before gesturing for Mara to follow. The meaning was clear. It would ensure her safe return. As they emerged from the shelter, Mara donned her helmet, grateful for the rush of oxygen-enriched air. The climb back to the plateau would be challenging even in VTX-9's reduced gravity, especially with the first symptoms of oxygen deprivation already affecting her coordination. To her surprise, Rix crouched beside her, clearly offering transportation. After a moment's hesitation, trusting her life to an alien predator went against every survival instinct. Mara carefully positioned herself on its back, between the crystalline structures that now emitted a steady, calming blue light. The journey up the ravine wall, which would have taken Mara at least 30 minutes of careful climbing, took Rix less than 5. Its powerful limbs found purchase on surfaces that appeared sheer to human eyes, and its movements remained smooth, despite the added burden of Mara's weight. At the plateau's edge, it set her down gently beside the rover. "Thank you," Mara said, the words wholly inadequate for what had transpired between them. "Will I see you again? Before the others arrive?" Rix made the rumbling affirmation, then added the melodic tone she had interpreted as approval. With a final, deliberate bow, it turned and descended back into the ravine with astonishing speed, disappearing from sight within seconds. Mara stood watching the empty ravine for several minutes, processing the encounter and its implications. Her recording device remained non-functional, leaving her with no evidence beyond her own testimony, which, given her actions in disregarding Syra's instructions, would likely be viewed with heightened skepticism. The return journey to the outpost passed in a blur of racing thoughts and contingency planning. By the time she docked the rover in its designated bay, Mara had formulated what she hoped was a plausible explanation for the communication failure without revealing the full extent of her encounter with Rix. Lieutenant Sira Tolan was waiting for her at the airlock, her expression a carefully controlled mask of professional concern that didn't quite conceal the anger beneath. "In my office, now," was all she said as Mara completed decontamination procedures. Sira's office was Spartan but personal. Standard-issue furniture arranged with military precision. Walls adorned only with her service commendations and a single holographic image of what Mara assumed was her homeworld. The security chief activated the conversation scrambler before turning to face Mara, arms crossed tightly over her chest. "Explain," she demanded, voice tight with suppressed emotion. "And it had better be good, Ellis, because what I saw before losing connection was enough to have you removed from this outpost and possibly court-martialed for endangering the entire mission." Mara took a deep breath. The communication device malfunctioned when exposed to an unknown energy signature emitted by what appears to be alien technology. "I saw that much," Sira snapped. "What I want to know is why you removed your helmet in potentially hazardous conditions, approached an unclassified predator species, and entered what was clearly an artificial structure not previously documented in our surveys, all in direct violation of the observation-only protocol we agreed upon." "Because it invited me," Mara said simply. And because it's the same individual I helped in the cave. It recognized me, Syra. It communicated with me. It has a name, or at least, I've given it one. Rix. Syra's expression shifted from anger to alarm. You named it? I needed some way to refer to it, Mara defended. And, more importantly, it has language, both vocal and written. It has technology that can disable our communications with precision. And, she added, saving the most critical information for last. It's not alone. There are more coming, converging on that location, soon. Syra sank into her chair, the implications hitting her with visible impact. Confederation protocol for this situation is absolute, she said, after a long pause. Unknown sentient species with technological capabilities must be reported immediately to Central Command, especially if there's potential for multiple individuals to converge near an established outpost. And then what happens? Mara pressed. Containment teams? Military intervention? First contact conducted by soldiers instead of diplomats or scientists? That's not our decision to make, Ellis. It should be, Mara insisted. We're here. We've established communication, however rudimentary. Rix has shown no aggression despite ample opportunity. It even helped me return to my rover when my oxygen levels dropped. We have a chance to do this right. Syra. The security chief was silent for a long moment, conflict evident in her expression. Commander Hadrian will follow protocol, she said finally. And he won't appreciate that we've already delayed reporting for nearly 3 days. Then we go above him, Mara suggested, desperation edging into her voice. Directly to Sector Command. Request diplomatic personnel instead of containment teams. There must be procedures for peaceful first contact scenarios. There are, Syra acknowledged. But they're rarely implemented. The Confederation prefers security over diplomacy, in most cases, involving technologically capable species. She ran a hand through her silver hair, a gesture of frustration Mara had rarely seen from the usually composed officer. And there's another problem. I've been monitoring outpost communications since our agreement. There was a transmission sent yesterday, heavily encrypted, not through official channels. Mara felt her stomach tighten. Hadrian? Or someone else on staff. I couldn't trace it without raising flags. Syra's expression hardened. But if someone has already reported unusual activity in this sector, Confederation response teams could be en route already. The implication was clear. They might already be too late to prevent a potentially disastrous first contact scenario. We have to try, Mara insisted. Please, Syra, help me do this right. After what seemed an eternity, Syra nodded. I'll compose a direct communique to Sector Commander Varen. She owes me a favor from the Proxima incident. But Ellis, she added, voice grave. I make no promises about the outcome. And if this goes badly, if these creatures prove hostile, or if Confederation protocols are enacted despite our efforts, there will be consequences for both of us. I understand, Mara said, relief and apprehension warring within her. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Syra warned, echoing her words from days earlier. Draft a complete report of your encounters, including detailed descriptions of the communication attempts and technology observed. I want it on my desk within 2 hours. And Ellis, she added as Mara turned to leave. No more solo expeditions. Whatever happens next, we face it together. Clear? Crystal, Mara agreed, this time with genuine conviction. The next 48 hours passed in a tense blur of activity. Mara's report, combined with Syra's carefully worded communique to Sector Commander Varen, resulted in an immediate response. A diplomatic team was being dispatched to VTX-9, but so were Confederation security forces. The outpost was placed on high alert, with all non-essential personnel restricted to the main complex. Commander Hadrian, furious at being circumvented and skeptical of Mara's account despite Syra's support, assigned Mara to restricted laboratory duty, effectively a form of house arrest that prevented her from any further contact with Rix. The commander made no secret of his belief that Mara had either fabricated the encounter or dangerously misinterpreted it. "Xenobiologists," he muttered during one particularly tense staff meeting, "always anthropomorphizing every organism they study. Next, she'll claim the bacteria in her soil samples are developing a written language." Mara endured the mockery in silence, focusing instead on preparing the most comprehensive briefing possible for the incoming diplomatic team. Without additional contact with Rix, her information remained frustratingly limited. But she documented everything: the apparent social structure, the sophisticated technology, the communication attempts, and most importantly, the consistently non-aggressive behavior despite clear predatory capabilities. On the morning of the diplomatic team's scheduled arrival, Mara was summoned to the command center. To her surprise, Commander Hadrian was not present. Instead, Lieutenant Syra waited beside an unfamiliar figure, a tall, austere woman with silver-streaked dark hair and the insignia of a Confederation sector commander on her immaculate uniform. "Dr. Ellis," Syra said formally, "may I present Sector Commander Elisa Varen. Commander, this is Dr. Mara Ellis, our xenobiologist and the individual who made first contact with the species in question." Varen's penetrating gaze assessed Mara with clinical precision. "Dr. Ellis, your report makes for fascinating reading. Some might say too fascinating to be credible." "I reported exactly what I observed, Commander," Mara replied, maintaining eye contact despite the intimidating presence of such a high-ranking official. "So Lieutenant Tolan assures me." Varen gestured to the command center's main display, which showed a real-time topographical map of the region surrounding the outpost. "Perhaps you can explain, then, why our sensors are detecting multiple large biological signatures converging on the western ridge, exactly as you predicted in your report." The display confirmed Varen's statement. At least 7 distinct biosignatures, each consistent with Rix's approximate size and energy pattern, moving with purpose toward the ravine where Mara had encountered him. "They're coming," Mara breathed, equal parts vindicated and alarmed. "Just as Rix indicated." "Rix," Varen repeated, a hint of something unreadable in her tone. "You've named the specimen." "It indicated a designation for itself," Mara corrected carefully. "I've approximated it as Rix, for ease of reference." Varen studied the display silently for a moment before turning back to Mara. "The diplomatic team arrives in 3 hours. The security detail," she added with significant emphasis, "arrives in 2. I had hoped to have more time for preparation, but it seems these beings have their own timeline." "What are your orders, Commander?" Syra asked. "Establish a perimeter around the convergence point, but maintain distance. No engagement unless directly threatened." Varen's gaze returned to Mara. "And Dr. Ellis will accompany me to the observation position. If these creatures truly attempted communication with her, her presence may prove useful." "Is that wise?" Syra questioned, concern evident in her voice. "The security detail—" "Will follow my orders," Varen interrupted firmly, "as will Commander Hadrian, who has been temporarily relieved of command authority in this matter." She addressed Mara directly. "Be ready to depart in 30 minutes. Doctor, bring any equipment you believe might facilitate communication, but be prepared for the possibility that your previous encounter was anomalous." As Varen departed to make further preparations, Syra caught Mara's arm. "Be careful," she warned quietly. "Varen has a reputation for putting Confederation interests above all else, including the welfare of individual personnel." "Noted," Mara replied, already mentally cataloging the equipment she would need. "But this is our chance, Syra, to do this right." "Just make sure you come back in one piece," Syra said, releasing her arm. "I've grown oddly attached to our resident dirt collector." 30 minutes later, Mara found herself aboard a Confederation tactical transport with Sector Commander Varin and a small team of security personnel. The vehicle, significantly more advanced than the outpost's standard rovers, moved swiftly across VTX-9's rugged terrain toward the western ridge. "Your report indicates this Rix demonstrated protective behavior toward you," Varin remarked as they approached the designated observation point. "Why do you believe that is?" Mara chose her words carefully. "I rescued it from a life-threatening situation and provided medical treatment. Its subsequent behavior suggests a form of reciprocal obligation or gratitude, though those terms may not precisely translate to its cultural framework. Or it recognized a useful tool," Varin suggested coolly. "An inside connection to the human outpost. With respect, Commander, that interpretation doesn't account for its initial decision to guide me to safety when it could have simply abandoned me in the cave system." Mara met Varin's calculating gaze. "Whatever its motivation, it chose to help me when doing so offered no clear advantage." "An interesting perspective," Varin allowed, though her tone suggested skepticism. "We'll soon see if its companions share this apparent benevolence." The transport crested a rise, bringing them within visual range of the convergence point. The security team established observation equipment with practiced efficiency, while Varin and Mara moved to a position offering clear sightlines into the ravine below. Through high-powered magnification devices, they watched as Rix emerged from its shelter to meet the approaching members of its species. The newcomers varied slightly in size and coloration, but all shared the distinctive crystalline structures along their spines, currently emitting a range of colors from deep blue to vibrant amber. "Fascinating," Mara murmured, observing the complex interaction patterns. The crystal colorations appear to correlate with specific behaviors or communications. Some form of emotional or status signaling, perhaps. Or battle readiness indicators, Varin noted, focusing on those displaying amber hues. The variations in size and physical development suggest a hierarchical social structure. As they watched, the gathered creatures performed what appeared to be a ritualized greeting, involving specific postures and synchronized movements of their articulated limbs. Rix, identifiable by the slight irregularity in its healed limb, seemed to hold a position of significance within the group, though not necessarily dominance. "There," Mara pointed suddenly. "That exchange of tablet-like objects, they're sharing information in written form." Varin adjusted her observation device for maximum magnification. "Confirmed. Sophisticated communication methods, consistent with your report." Her voice remained neutral, but Mara detected a hint of surprise, perhaps even reluctant respect. The creatures' interaction continued for nearly an hour, their meeting appearing to grow more intense as time passed. The crystalline structures shifted through various color patterns, sometimes in unison, other times in apparent response to specific communications. Then, without warning, all crystal structures simultaneously flared brilliant white. The creatures fell into formation around Rix, who raised its head toward the observation point, where Mara and Varin watched. "It knows we're here," Mara whispered. "All units, alert status," Varin ordered into her communicator. "Maintain positions but be prepared for potential approach." The formation began to move, not toward the observation point as expected, but in a different direction entirely. Adjusting their viewing equipment, Mara and Varin realized with alarm that the creatures were heading directly toward the research outpost. "They're going to the outpost," Mara said unnecessarily, her mind racing through possibilities. "But why? Rix knows I'm not there." "Perhaps that's precisely the point," Varin replied grimly. "All units, return to transport immediately. Priority alert to outpost security. Unknown entities approaching from western vector. Estimated time to perimeter contact, 20 minutes." The return journey was tense, The transport pushed to maximum speed across the treacherous terrain. Varen maintained constant communication with the outpost, issuing a series of increasingly restrictive security protocols, culminating in a complete lockdown. The diplomatic team has been diverted to secondary landing coordinates, she informed Mara as they approached the outpost. Security forces are deploying defensive positions. These precautions may be unnecessary, Mara argued. There's been no indication of hostile intent. A previously unknown sentient species with demonstrated technological capabilities is converging on an isolated Confederation outpost. Varen replied coldly. Standard protocols will be observed until proven unnecessary. Dr. Ellis. As they arrived at the outpost's main entrance, Syra met them with a grim expression. Perimeter sensors confirm approach from the western vector. 8 distinct entities, moving in formation at approximately 40 kilometers per hour. Estimated arrival, 7 minutes. Defense systems? Varen inquired. Activated but passive. No targeting protocols engaged. Syra glanced at Mara. As per your standing orders, Commander. Varen nodded approvingly. Maintain current status. I want full visual on all approaches and immediate notification of any change in formation or behavior. The command center was a flurry of controlled activity, as personnel monitored sensor readings and security positions. Mara found herself relegated to observer status, permitted to watch, but not participate in the response planning. 3 minutes to perimeter contact, announced a technical officer, voice steady despite the tension pervading the room. Varen turned to Mara suddenly. Your assessment, Dr. Ellis. What should we expect? Surprised by the question after being effectively sidelined, Mara gathered her thoughts quickly. Based on observed behavior, I believe this is a deliberate contact attempt, not a threat display. The formation suggests organization and purpose, not attack positioning. And if you're wrong, then I miscalculated badly, Mara admitted. But everything I've observed suggests intelligence and restraint, not aggression. Varen studied her for a moment, then nodded slightly. Your perspective is noted. She turned back to the main display. All units maintain current posture. No aggressive actions without direct authorization. The perimeter sensors registered the approaching formation with increasing detail as they neared the outpost. The main display showed them clearly now. 8 creatures moving with synchronized precision. Ricks at their center. Crystalline structures uniformly emitting a steady, pulsating blue light. They've stopped, Syra reported, as the formation halted precisely at the outpost's outermost sensor perimeter, maintaining position approximately 200 meters from the main entrance. What are they waiting for? Someone muttered. The answer came in an unexpected form. A communication request registered on the outpost's systems, not from any Confederation channel, but from an unknown source using Confederation protocols. That's impossible, the communications officer exclaimed. They can't have our encryption codes. Unless they extracted them from our technology, Varen theorized. Dr. Ellis reported their ability to interface with and disable Confederation devices. The implications sent a ripple of unease through the command center. If these creatures could not only disable, but actually access and utilize Confederation technology, their capabilities far exceeded initial assessments. Accept the communication, Varen ordered after a brief hesitation. Audio only, maximum security protocols. The communication channel opened with a burst of static, followed by silence. Then, to the astonishment of everyone present, a voice emerged, not human, but clearly intelligible, with a resonant, multi-toned quality that suggested multiple vocal structures operating in concert. We seek Mara Ellis, the voice stated. The life debtor awaits her presence. Mara felt every eye in the command center turn to her, expressions ranging from shock to suspicion to undisguised fear. This is Sector Commander Elisa Varen of the Confederation, Varen responded, recovering quickly. Identify yourselves and state your purpose. "We are the Apex Legion," the voice replied. "We serve the life debtor, who serves the life giver. The life giver is Mara Ellis. We will speak only with her." Varen muted the communication temporarily. "Dr. Ellis, explain this immediately." "I can't," Mara said honestly, as surprised as anyone by this development. "I had no idea they could communicate in our language, or that they had given me some kind of designation." She paused, processing the terminology. "Life giver, because I saved Rix's life, and life debtor must be Rix itself." "Legion," Varen repeated, focusing on the most concerning aspect. "A military term." "Not necessarily in their context," Mara argued. "It could simply indicate a collective or social group." Varen considered this briefly, then unmuted the communication. "Mara Ellis is here. However, as a representative of the Confederation, I must first understand your intentions." A pause. Then, "The life debtor has claimed protection right for the life giver. The Legion acknowledges this claim and extends protection to her dwelling and clan. We come to formalize this bond according to ancient law." Mara felt a chill run down her spine. "They're following some form of cultural protocol," she whispered to Varen. "A life debt that extends beyond individual obligation to social recognition." Varen's expression remained unreadable. "And if we refuse this formalization, then the Legion stands until the life giver emerges," the voice replied simply. "We will not depart without fulfilling our obligation." A tense silence filled the command center as Varen assessed the situation. The security forces were in position, the diplomatic team still en route, and 8 powerful alien creatures waited patiently at their doorstep, apparently intent on some form of ceremonial acknowledgement. "I should go out there," Mara said quietly. "They're here because of me. This is my responsibility." "It's too dangerous," Syra objected immediately. "We know nothing about this formalization process. We know they've had multiple opportunities to harm me, and have chosen protection instead," Mara countered. "And we know they could have approached aggressively, but have instead maintained distance and attempted communication." Varen observed the exchange thoughtfully before making her decision. "Dr. Ellis will meet with these creatures," she announced, "under controlled conditions, with security monitoring, and wearing full communication equipment." She fixed Mara with a penetrating stare. "This is not a negotiation, Doctor. You will follow security protocols precisely, or this meeting will not happen." Preparation for the encounter was thorough and swift. Mara was equipped with an enhanced communication device, vital sign monitors, and a discreet emergency beacon. Security personnel established a protected corridor from the main entrance to a designated meeting point 50 meters from the facility, close enough for defensive coverage but far enough to indicate a measure of trust. "Remember," Varen instructed, as Mara prepared to exit the airlock, "you are not authorized to make any agreements or commitments on behalf of the Confederation. This is an information-gathering exercise only." "Understood," Mara agreed, though privately she wondered how much control she would actually have over whatever ceremony these creatures, the Apex Legion, as they called themselves, intended to perform. As the airlock cycled and the outer door opened, Mara stepped onto VTX-9's surface with a strange sense of déjà vu. Just days ago, she had been an overlooked xenobiologist collecting soil samples. Now, she walked toward a formation of alien predators as a designated life giver, whatever that entailed. The Apex Legion remained in perfect formation as she approached, their crystalline structures now pulsating in synchronized patterns of blue and violet. At the formation center, Rix stepped forward, its multiple eyes fixed intently on Mara. "I am here," she said simply, when she reached the designated meeting point. Rix performed the now familiar bow, lowering its massive head in what Mara had come to interpret as a gesture of respect. Then, to her surprise, it spoke, not in the resonant, multi-tone voice that had come through the communication system, but in a more guttural, yet recognizably deliberate vocalization. "Mara," it said, the approximation of her name now clearly intentional rather than coincidental. "Life-giver." "You can speak my language," Mara stated, astonishment overriding protocol momentarily. "Learn. Quick," Rix replied, the words clearly difficult for its vocal structure. "Legion, bring voice maker." It gestured to one of the other creatures, slightly smaller, but with more elaborate crystalline formations. "Speak better through machine." The designated voice maker stepped forward, carrying what appeared to be a sophisticated device, integrated into its articulated limb. This, Mara realized, must be the source of the clear communication they had heard in the command center. Some form of advanced translation technology. "Life-giver Mara Ellis," the voice maker said through its device, the multi-toned resonance now making sense as a product of technological enhancement. "The life-debtor Rix of the Silkar clan has claimed protection right on your behalf. This is a sacred bond, unbroken in 7 generations of the Legion's service." "I don't understand what that means," Mara admitted. "What is protection right?" "When one saves the life of a Silkar warrior without claiming payment or servitude. The warrior is bound by the Hunter's Code to offer protection until the debt is balanced," the voice maker explained. "Rix has determined that no lesser service than lifetime protection would balance his debt to you." Mara glanced at Rix, who watched her with those intelligent, alien eyes. "That seems excessive for treating some injuries." "You violated your clan's laws to save him," the voice maker countered. "We intercepted your clan's communications. Your leaders ordered no interaction, yet you risked punishment to preserve his life. The weight of the debt is measured not only by the act, but by the sacrifice it required." The realization that they had been monitoring outpost communications was disturbing, but not entirely surprising, given their demonstrated technological capabilities. More concerning was their apparent misunderstanding of Confederation hierarchy as clan structure. "And what does this protection entail, exactly?" Mara asked, conscious of Varen and the others listening to every word. "The Legion serves the life-debtor, who serves you," came the straightforward reply. "Your enemies become our enemies. Your shelter becomes our territory to defend. Your clan falls under our extended protection." Mara struggled to maintain her composure as the implications registered. These creatures, the Silkar and their Apex Legion, were essentially offering military alliance based on a cultural code that, to them, superseded any other agreement or protocol. "My clan already has protection systems," she said carefully. "And we have not been at war with anyone on VTX-9. The metal birds that attacked your supply vessel disagree," the voice maker responded. Mara's confusion must have been evident, because the voice maker elaborated. 3 lunar cycles passed. Vessels approached your clan's territory. They attacked your supply carrier. The life-debtor witnessed this from hunting grounds. "Pirates!" Mara realized aloud. The supply delay Hadrian had attributed to mechanical issues had actually been a pirate attack, not uncommon in the outer sectors, but rarely reported to research personnel to avoid causing alarm. "The Legion eliminated the threat," the voice maker stated matter-of-factly. "The life-debtor's first service to his life-giver." Mara's mind reeled. The Silkar had apparently defended Confederation shipping against pirates, without anyone in the outpost even being aware of the threat. Their technological capabilities, combat effectiveness. And now this cultural code of protection presented implications far beyond what she had anticipated from her initial encounter with Rix. "I appreciate the protection," she said carefully, "but I'm not sure my leaders will understand or accept this arrangement." "The Hunter's Code does not require understanding or acceptance," the voice maker replied. "Only acknowledgement of the bond." Rix stepped forward again, presenting what appeared to be a ceremonial object. a small, crystalline formation similar to those along its spine, mounted in a setting of the same metallic-seeming material that lined its shelter. "Token," it said in its own halting voice rather than through the translator. "Mark of Legion protection." Mara hesitated, acutely aware of Varen's instructions not to make any agreements, yet refusing what was clearly an important cultural ritual after coming this far seemed potentially disastrous. "If I accept this token," she asked carefully, "what exactly am I agreeing to?" "To acknowledge the debt," the voice maker explained. "To permit the life debtor and Legion to fulfill their sacred obligation. Nothing more is required of you." Mara considered her options carefully. This was clearly a pivotal moment in what had unexpectedly become first contact with an advanced species. Her scientific training argued for caution and deferral to established protocols. But her instincts, the same instincts that had led her to save Rix in the first place, told her that rejecting this offering would be a grave cultural offense. "I accept this token," she said finally, extending her hand. "And I acknowledge Rix's debt, though I consider his actions in guiding me to safety as sufficient repayment." "The life debtor determines the weight of obligation," the voice maker replied, as Rix placed the crystal token in Mara's palm. "It cannot be negotiated or diminished by the life giver." The crystal was surprisingly warm to the touch, and as Mara's fingers closed around it, it emitted a soft blue glow similar to the structures on Rix's spine. The assembled Legion members simultaneously lowered their heads in the same respectful bow Rix had demonstrated earlier. "The bond is acknowledged," the voice maker intoned. "The Legion stands with the life giver Mara Ellis and her clan." Mara returned to the outpost with the crystal token and a profound sense that she had just participated in something far more significant than a mere cultural exchange. Sector Commander Varen waited in the airlock, her expression unreadable as she observed the glowing crystal in Mara's hand. "You accepted their offering despite my explicit instructions," she noted, voice carefully neutral. "I made a judgment call," Mara replied, meeting Varen's gaze steadily. "Refusing would have been interpreted as rejection of their entire cultural framework. The potential diplomatic damage outweighed the risk of acceptance." Varen was silent for a moment, studying Mara with new consideration. "An interesting rationalization. Dr. Ellis, we'll discuss the implications after you've been debriefed." She gestured to the crystal. "That object will need to be analyzed before you can retain possession." "With respect, Commander, I don't think that's wise," Mara countered. "They specifically presented this as a token of protection. Confiscating it could be interpreted as rejection of the very bond I just formally acknowledged. It could also be a tracking device, a weapon, or any number of threats to this outpost," Varen pointed out coolly. "Security protocols are not optional, Doctor, regardless of cultural sensitivities." Before Mara could argue further, the outpost's alert system activated with a piercing wail. Syra's voice came through the communication system, tense but controlled. "Commander Varen to Command Center immediately. Confederation transport under attack at secondary landing coordinates." Varen's composure cracked momentarily, genuine alarm flashing across her features. "The diplomatic team," she breathed, already moving toward the command center with Mara close behind. The scene that greeted them on the main display was chaotic. The diplomatic transport, still airborne, executing evasive maneuvers as smaller craft, unmistakably pirate vessels, pursued with weapons firing. The outpost's long-range sensors had captured the engagement just within their maximum range. "Defensive capabilities?" Varen demanded. "Military training taking precedence over diplomatic concerns." "Transport has minimal shielding, standard countermeasures," reported the tactical officer. "No escort vessels assigned due to resource limitations." "Nearest Confederation military response?" "At least 3 hours at maximum speed, assuming immediate deployment." Varen's expression hardened as she assessed the situation. The transport cannot sustain evasive action for that duration. Prepare our security team for potential defensive deployment, though I doubt we'll reach them in time. Mara looked down at the crystal token still clutched in her hand, its blue glow pulsing slightly faster than before. An idea. Radical. Potentially career-ending, but possibly the only option, formed in her mind. "Commander," she said urgently, "the Apex Legion. They said they eliminated a pirate threat before. They offered protection to my clan, which they might interpret to include the incoming diplomatic team." Varine's eyes narrowed. "You're suggesting we ask these creatures, about whom we know almost nothing, to engage in combat on behalf of the Confederation?" "I'm suggesting we accept help that's already been offered," Mara countered. "Lives are at stake, Commander. The Legion has demonstrated both the capability and willingness to protect what they consider under their protection." For a tense moment, Varyn seemed to war with herself, diplomatic caution battling military pragmatism. Finally, she nodded sharply. "Make the request, Dr. Ellis, but understand that you will bear full responsibility for the consequences." Mara wasted no time. Returning to the airlock, she found the Apex Legion still in formation where she had left them, apparently awaiting some further development. Rix stepped forward as she approached, crystalline structures shifting to a more alert amber hue. "Life-giver returns," the voice maker translated. "What troubles you? Your life signs indicate distress." "My clan members, important people coming to meet you, are under attack," Mara explained quickly. "Pirates, like the ones you stopped before. They won't survive without help." The effect was immediate. Rix's crystals flared bright red, and a sound like a battle cry emerged from its throat. The Legion's formation shifted instantly from ceremonial to what was unmistakably a combat arrangement. "The Legion protects what the Life-Giver values," the voice maker stated, as its own crystals shifted to match Rix's alarming red. "Show us." Mara led them quickly to a position where the command center's external display was visible, showing the ongoing attack. Rix studied the tactical situation for only moments before issuing a series of vocalizations that needed no translation to convey their meaning. Combat orders. Two of the Legion members immediately broke formation and raced toward what Mara now realized was a concealed vessel of some kind. Technology, far beyond what she had glimpsed in Rix's shelter. The remaining members, including Rix, turned to Mara. "The Legion hunts," the voice maker translated simply. "The Life-Giver's clan will be preserved." Before Mara could respond, the Legion members moved with astonishing speed toward their hidden craft. Within minutes, sensors detected a new vessel launching from beyond the western ridge, sleek, predatory in design, and moving at velocities that suggested propulsion technology beyond current Confederation capabilities. In the command center, Varyn and her team watched in stunned silence as the Silkar vessel intercepted the pirate attackers with devastating efficiency. The pirates, clearly unprepared for this unexpected intervention, scattered in disarray, only to be methodically disabled by precision strikes from the Silkar craft. "Their weapons technology," Syra murmured, watching the tactical display with professional assessment. "Targeted disabling rather than destruction. They're neutralizing engines and weapon systems without catastrophic damage, suggesting either remarkable precision or technology specifically designed for disabling rather than destroying," Varyn noted, her initial skepticism giving way to strategic evaluation. "Either way, it demonstrates capabilities significantly beyond what we anticipated." The engagement ended as swiftly as it had begun. The pirate vessels drifted powerless in VTX-9's thin upper atmosphere, while the diplomatic transport proceeded unharmed to the outpost's landing pad. The Silkar vessel executed a final sweep of the area before returning to its hidden base beyond the ridge. When Mara returned to the command center, she found a dramatically altered atmosphere. The tension remained, but it had transformed from fear of the unknown to wary respect for demonstrated capability. Varen stood reviewing the combat footage, her expression thoughtful. The Apex Legion has proven both their technological superiority and their commitment to this protection arrangement, she acknowledged as Mara approached. The diplomatic implications are significant. They did exactly what they promised, Mara pointed out. Protected those they consider under their extended bond. Yes, Varen agreed, turning to face her fully. The question now is what that bond truly entails, and what the Confederation's response should be to an unknown military force that has effectively established a protection agreement with one of our citizens. The diplomatic team's arrival brought new complications. Led by Senior Envoy Thomas Reyes, the team consisted of specialists in xenobiology, cultural anthropology, and diplomatic protocol, all now confronted with a first contact scenario fundamentally altered by Mara's unorthodox actions and the Legion's dramatic intervention. "You've created quite the situation, Dr. Ellis," Envoy Reyes remarked during the initial briefing. Unlike Varen's cool assessment, his tone carried a hint of genuine admiration. Standard first contact procedures rarely begin with life-saving medical intervention and military alliance. "It wasn't intentional," Mara defended. "I made a humanitarian choice that apparently carried significant cultural weight in their society." "Indeed," Reyes agreed. "This life debt concept provides a unique foundation for diplomatic relations, personal rather than political, based on demonstrated action rather than negotiated terms." He studied the footage of the Legion's formation and the subsequent rescue operation. Most intriguing is their apparent technological advancement, coupled with what seems to be a highly traditional honor code. The diplomatic team spent hours reviewing all available information, preparing for formal contact with the Silkar leadership, which, according to the voicemaker's translations, extended beyond the Apex Legion to a complex societal structure they had thus far glimpsed only through Rix's references. Meanwhile, Mara found herself in an unprecedented position, neither fully part of the diplomatic team nor exempt from the process due to her unique relationship with Rix and, by extension, the Legion. The crystal token remained in her possession after preliminary scans revealed no obvious technological components, despite its bioluminescent properties. "It appears to be a naturally occurring crystalline formation," reported the xenobiologist assigned to examine it. "Similar to those observed on the creature's bodies, but somehow activated or cultivated to maintain luminescence independently. Fascinating organic technology, if we can even call it technology in our conventional understanding." 3 days after the Legion's intervention, as diplomatic preparations neared completion, Mara was summoned to Varen's temporary office. The commander had been in continuous communication with Confederation Central Command. Her reports and recommendations shaping the official response to this unexpected first contact. "Dr. Ellis," Varen greeted her, setting aside a datapad filled with diplomatic protocols. "I've received my final instructions regarding your situation." Mara tensed, expecting reprimand or perhaps even detention for her unauthorized actions. Instead, Varen continued in a surprisingly measured tone. "Central Command has determined that your unique position as this life-giver represents both an unprecedented diplomatic opportunity and a potential security concern." She met Mara's gaze directly. "They have instructed me to offer you a choice: formal integration into the diplomatic team as special liaison to the Silkar, with all the responsibilities and restrictions that entails, or immediate transfer from VTX-9 to a Confederation research facility where your knowledge of the Silkar can be properly debriefed and documented." The implications were clear. Become part of the official diplomatic process, subject to Confederation protocols and oversight, or be removed from the situation entirely, perhaps permanently. "That's not really a choice," Mara observed. "If I refuse the liaison position, What happens to my relationship with Rix and the Legion? To this life debt they consider sacred? That would become a matter for the diplomatic team to manage, Varen replied carefully. Without your direct involvement. Mara considered the crystal token she now wore on a simple cord around her neck. Its steady blue glow, a constant reminder of the bond she had acknowledged. And if I accept the liaison position? You would be granted diplomatic standing, but required to adhere to strict protocols regarding all interactions with the Silkar. Your communications would be monitored, your movements restricted to approved areas, and all information shared in either direction would be subject to security review. Varen's expression softened slightly. It's not ideal from a scientific perspective. I realize, but it's the best compromise Central Command would approve. When do I need to decide? Now, Varen said simply. The formal diplomatic delegation meets with the Silkar leadership tomorrow. Your status must be resolved before then. Mara took a deep breath, weighing her options, limited as they were. The scientist in her rebelled against the restrictions, the monitoring, the inevitable politicization of what had begun as a simple act of compassion. But the alternative meant abandoning not just her research, but a connection that had already altered the course of human-alien relations. Perhaps irrevocably. I accept the liaison position, she said finally. But I want it officially noted that I consider my primary responsibility to be facilitating genuine understanding between our species, not advancing any particular political agenda. Varen's lips quirked in what might have been the ghost of a smile. Noted, Dr. Ellis. Though I suspect you'll find that distinction increasingly difficult to maintain. She activated her datapad, making the official designation. Report to Envoy Reyes for briefing on diplomatic protocols. The ceremony is scheduled for 0900 hours tomorrow. The diplomatic briefing was exhaustive, covering everything from formal address conventions to gift exchange protocols to conflict resolution procedures, none of which seemed particularly relevant to the unique situation with the Silkar. Mara endured it patiently, understanding the need for structure in such unprecedented circumstances, but increasingly certain that conventional diplomacy would prove inadequate for a species whose most sacred value appeared to be a form of honor-bound obligation. Early the next morning, as she prepared for the formal meeting, Mara was surprised by a visitor, Lieutenant Syra Tolan, bearing what appeared to be a modified environmental suit. Special design for the new liaison, Syra explained, presenting the suit with uncharacteristic formality. Reinforced protection, enhanced communication capabilities, and, most importantly, an integrated mount for your crystal token, keeping it visible even through the helmet visor. Mara examined the thoughtful modification. A small, transparent compartment positioned at the suit's collar, perfectly sized for the Silkar crystal. This wasn't in the diplomatic preparation materials. No, Syra agreed with a slight smile. It was my initiative. The diplomatic team understands protocols, but they don't understand the Silkar, not like you do. That token matters to them, so it should be prominently displayed, not hidden beneath layers of Confederation standard issue equipment. Touched by the gesture, Mara carefully placed the crystal in its new mounting. It seemed to pulse more brightly in response, as if approving of its more visible position. Thank you, Syra, she said sincerely, for this, and for supporting me through all of this. She gestured vaguely, encompassing the extraordinary events of the past weeks. Just doing my job, Syra replied with typical understatement. Though I admit, when I offered to help you smuggle lab supplies, I didn't anticipate it leading to interspecies diplomacy and alien military alliances. The formal meeting took place in a neutral location, a specially constructed pavilion on the plateau overlooking the Western Ridge, designed to accommodate both human and Silkar physiological needs. The diplomatic team arrived first, establishing position according to carefully planned protocol, with Mara assigned a place of honor beside Envoy Reyes, despite her junior status. The Silcar delegation appeared precisely at the appointed time, approaching in formation but with significant differences from their previous appearance. Additional members had joined them, some bearing elaborate decorations on their crystalline structures, others carrying what appeared to be ceremonial implements. At their center walked Rix, now adorned with symbols etched into the metallic plates of its hide and a formal harness supporting additional crystalline formations. As they reached the pavilion, the voice maker stepped forward, its translation device more elaborate than before. "The Silcar Conclave greets the Human Confederation," it announced, using the terms the diplomatic team had provided in preliminary communications. "We come in peace, bound by the sacred life debt of our warrior Rix to the human Mara Ellis." The formal introductions proceeded according to protocol, with Envoy Reyes presenting each member of the diplomatic team and the voice maker identifying key members of the Silcar delegation. The terminology was complex, suggesting a society with intricate social hierarchies and specialized roles beyond the military function of the Apex Legion. When Mara was formally presented as liaison to the Silcar and acknowledged life-giver, Rix stepped forward, crystalline structures blazing bright blue. The assembled Silcar performed a synchronized bow, deeper and more elaborate than the individual gesture Mara had previously witnessed. "The life-giver's status is recognized by the Conclave," the voice-maker translated. "Her voice carries the weight of honor bond in all deliberations." This was not part of the planned protocol, and Mara could sense the diplomatic team's tension at this unexpected elevation of her status. Envoy Reyes recovered quickly, however, acknowledging the statement with appropriate formality before guiding the conversation toward the prepared agenda. The discussions that followed were complex, covering territory rights, technological exchange limitations, communication protocols, and conflict resolution mechanisms, standard elements of first contact diplomacy adapted to the unusual circumstances. Throughout the negotiations, however, a pattern emerged. The Silcar representatives consistently deferred to Rix on any matter that could potentially affect Mara or the outpost, and Rix, in turn, seemed to weigh each proposal against some internal standard before signaling approval or reservation. During a brief recess, Envoy Reyes pulled Mara aside, his expression troubled. "They're filtering everything through this life debt framework," he observed quietly. "Standard diplomatic approaches aren't working because they're not treating this as a negotiation between equal parties. In their view, they're already obligated to protect your interests, and by extension, the outposts, regardless of formal agreements." "Isn't that advantageous for us?" Mara asked, though she already suspected the answer. "In the short term, perhaps," Reyes conceded. "But sustainable diplomatic relations can't be built on a cultural misunderstanding. They're treating a personal obligation as the foundation for interspecies relations. Eventually, that discrepancy will cause problems." The envoy's concerns proved prescient. As negotiations resumed, fundamental differences in approach became increasingly apparent. The Silcar representatives seemed genuinely confused by certain Confederation proposals, particularly those involving mutual defense limitations and technological access restrictions. "The Legion already stands for the Life-Givers clan," the voice maker translated, when Reyes attempted to establish security boundaries. "Why would we withhold protection that is already pledged?" Similarly, attempts to establish research protocols met with resistance. Knowledge serves protection. The life debtor must understand threats to defend against them. Restriction undermines obligation. By the session's end, it was clear that conventional diplomatic frameworks were failing to bridge the conceptual gap between Confederation political pragmatism and Silcar honor culture. The two groups parted with formal pleasantries, but few concrete agreements beyond basic recognition and communication channels. "This isn't working," Varen stated bluntly in the post-meeting analysis. They're approaching this entire process through a cultural lens we barely understand, centered on a personal relationship with Dr. Ellis. I tried to explain this would happen, Mara pointed out. Their entire social structure seems built around obligation networks and honor codes. Political considerations are secondary at best. Envoy Reyes nodded thoughtfully. We need to adapt our approach. Instead of trying to force Confederation diplomatic frameworks onto their cultural system, we should explore how their honor code can accommodate our necessary security and sovereignty concerns. And how exactly do we do that? Varen questioned. Through Dr. Ellis, Reyes replied, turning to Mara. You're not just a liaison anymore. You're the linchpin of this entire diplomatic process, whether we planned it that way or not. We need you to help us understand how to frame our concerns in terms the Silkar will respect. The responsibility was daunting, but Mara recognized its necessity. Over the following days, she worked closely with both the diplomatic team and Rix, gradually developing a new framework for relations that honored the life debt, while establishing boundaries acceptable to the Confederation. The breakthrough came when Mara realized that the Silkar Honor Code included concepts of appropriate territory and jurisdiction. Rather than asking them to limit their protection, which they considered non-negotiable, she helped the diplomatic team establish clear definitions of what constituted threats, requiring intervention versus internal matters where Confederation authority remained primary. The life debtor understands domain right, the voicemaker confirmed when Mara proposed this approach. Protection does not mean governance. The Legion defends. It does not rule. With this conceptual bridge established, other aspects of the diplomatic framework fell into place more naturally. Technology exchange would be limited, but focused on defensive capabilities rather than weapons development. Communication protocols would honor both Confederation security requirements and Silkar honor transparency. Territory rights would acknowledge the Silkar's prior claim to VTX-9 while establishing designated areas for Confederation research activities. Most significantly, Mara's position evolved from temporary liaison to permanent intermediary, officially recognized by both sides as the living embodiment of the bond between species. The crystal token she wore became not just a personal symbol, but a diplomatic credential, signifying her unique status. 6 months after the initial cave encounter, the research outpost had transformed dramatically. Now designated Cooperative Station VTX-9, it had expanded to include Silkar liaison facilities and joint research initiatives. The Apex Legion maintained a visible but non-intrusive presence, their advanced vessels occasionally visible patrolling the sector, but never interfering with Confederation operations unless threats emerged. Commander Hadrian had been permanently reassigned, replaced by a new administrator with experience in multi-species collaborative projects. Lieutenant Sarah Tolan remained, now heading an integrated security team that included Silkar advisors. Most surprisingly, Envoy Reyes had requested permanent assignment to the station, recognizing the ongoing diplomatic importance of what had begun as a remote research outpost. For Mara, the transformation extended beyond professional status. Her relationship with Rix had deepened into something neither human nor Silkar terminology could adequately describe. Not quite friendship in the human sense, but a form of mutual respect and understanding that transcended conventional bonds. They spent hours together, each learning the other's language and cultural frameworks, building a foundation for broader understanding between their species. The Silkar, it emerged, had inhabited VTX-9 for generations, their technology allowing them to remain undetected by Confederation surveys. Their society was complex, part nomadic hunter culture, part highly advanced technological civilization, bound together by elaborate honor codes that governed every aspect of social interaction. The Apex Legion represented just one caste within this structure, the warrior class whose life debts and protection obligations formed the backbone of their defensive capabilities. On the anniversary of her first encounter with Rix, Mara stood on the western ridge, overlooking the vast basin, where so much had changed. The research station gleamed in the distance, its new modules reflecting VTX-9's perpetual orange twilight. Beside her, Rix waited in companionable silence, crystalline structures emitting the calm blue that Mara now recognized as contentment. "One revolution complete," Rix said in its own voice, its command of human language having improved dramatically through dedicated study. "Life path altered." "For both of us," Mara agreed. "When I rescued you, I never imagined where it would lead." "No payment expected," Rix observed, referencing the core principle that had initiated the life debt. "Greatest gifts come without demand." The philosophical depth behind the simple statement reminded Mara yet again how profoundly she had misjudged this world and its inhabitants when she first arrived. What she had dismissed as just dirt had concealed an entire civilization. What had seemed a simple act of compassion had reshaped interspecies relations across the sector. As if reading her thoughts, Rix added, "Small actions, big ripples. This is the way of all things." In the distance, a Silkar vessel rose from its concealed base, beginning its patrol of the sector. The Confederation diplomatic vessel that had arrived that morning for the anniversary ceremonies gleamed on the landing pad beside it, different in design but equal in purpose. Two species, once unknown to each other, now bound in an arrangement that defied conventional diplomatic categories, but worked nevertheless. All because she had stopped to help an injured predator, asking nothing in return. "The Apex Legion stands with the Life Giver," Rix said formally, echoing the pledge that had started everything. "Now and until the debt is balanced." "And when will that be?" Mara asked, though they had discussed this many times before. Rix's crystalline structures pulsed once, brilliantly, before settling back to their steady blue glow. "Some debts can never be balanced," it replied simply. "Some gifts change everything." Mara touched the crystal token at her throat, still warm and glowing after all this time, a physical reminder of how a single act of compassion had altered not just her destiny, but the relationship between two species who might otherwise have met in fear or conflict. As the sun dipped lower on the horizon, casting long shadows across VTX-9's dusty plains, Mara and Rix stood together in silence, predator and scientist, life debtor and life giver, proof that even in the vast emptiness of space, connection could emerge from the most unexpected encounters.